Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah, and in this episode, we sit down with Ryan Kane. Ryan has exploded in the last 12 months because not only has he been doing a lot of virtual magic, but he's also been giving a lot of opportunities to other magicians to perform, hosting open mic nights, and really just building up the community, helping magicians work on their magic. Now, when I say work on their magic, to a lot of people, that may just mean to learn another trick or something like another move or something like that. But Ryan does the deep work on magic, about writing your own lines. And if you hear him, if you see him perform, you know that he's written every single word. They're clever. They are well thought out. They're incredible. And he even wrote a book on the subject called Out of Stock, helping you replace your stock line. So this episode was about a ton of things, including virtual, including writing, but we even take one of my stock lines from my current virtual magic show and take it through his process to replace it with something new or something better. This was a hands-on episode, a ton of fun, and you are going to love this awesome time with the one and only Ryan Kane. Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing super well and super excited to have you on because there have been just a few people who have really appeared in the world of magic, in the world of virtual magic, in the past few months that have kind of helped start and continue the conversation. So I'm super excited to have you here because anybody who's been hanging out in the Zoom Magic and Mentalism group, which is a wonderful Facebook group, anybody who has been just hanging out kind of on the internet in the magic world in the last 6 to 12 months has potentially heard your name, your book, your open mic night, or something to the other. So super excited to have you on and to chat magic.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm glad we finally got this to work out.
Yeah, man. So let's kind of talk about the beginning. How did you get started in magic? How did magic find you?
Yeah, I got a magic set as a kid. Very standard type of storyline there. The kind of where it breaks off for me was I discovered street performing really early. So I was street performing in the streets of Old Sacramento at 14, 15, which is where I really started developing what I want out of entertainment and kind of my style. But of course, with that came a lot of stock lines and really, really bad habits. And went to college and eventually left college to keep doing magic and get into the corporate world. And right before everything was changed, I was doing a lot of trade shows all over the world. So that's kind of my on-ramp to magic.
What allowed you to go from hobbyist to performer? Was there a moment, story, group, something like that?
I've always been very independent. So a lot of my early magic stuff was just myself learning things. And it I was never part of magic clubs. I don't think I went to my first convention till college, way later, and even than that probably. So for me, it was, I knew I wanted to perform. I knew I wanted to get crowds, and I knew I wanted to start making money. And when you start doing street performing, you start getting this income, and that leads to other things that allows you to kind of start doing that. And people ask when did you turn professional or whatever? It's I never had to really make that choice because I've always just had income via magic, via gigs. I did a lot of theater in high school. And so I actually was turning down gigs because if you've ever dated anybody in theater, the standard joke is, I have rehearsal. So when I went to college, which I went to study theater with a minor in business, I actually told myself all right, I'm not going to do any after school shows or any community productions of theater so that I can free my schedule and take as many gigs as possible. And I said, I'm going to do that for 2 years to give magic a shot. And then after 2 years, it became 3 years. And then I left college because, my calendar is full and I was working.
I love that story. One thing that comes to mind is, was it frustrating in school when all of your friends were in productions and you were just doing other things? Or did it kind of feel like you were 5 or 6 steps ahead of everyone else where they were all hypothesizing doing, real work in the real world and you actually were, or something to that end? Did you feel like you weren't a part of it, or did you feel like you were ahead of it, or something completely different?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I always felt like I was kind of on a parallel track to what they were doing. And I'm a little bit ahead because magicians like make money really early and faster. It's not like theater where like you do community productions and then you do like shows with a stipend, and then maybe you do a regional tour and then you do Broadway, or comedy where it's like you do open mics for free and then you do this for free and then you start headlining. Magicians just jump straight to like, I can get gigs. And so I had income, and I was doing, really, I was in San Francisco. So I was performing at like City Hall and stuff and doing really, really exciting stuff like that. But I don't think I probably missed the community aspect of like being in a production with people. It's a huge school too. So a lot of my friends weren't actually there would be like maybe one or two that was actually in like the college productions at any particular time, because there's so many students at the school.
Talk to me a little bit about some of the things that you were taking from it, because I think anybody who has seen your virtual show or seen you perform, it's obviously quite obvious you've got a background in theater. And I think sometimes that just might mean that there's more effort that we can obviously see, because you learned about all the different places you could put effort in, and other things like that. But I think in a more specific lens, there are some things in a magic or in a magician's life where they may never come across in the world of theater. They may never come across in the world of acting, or they may never have a mentor in magic or a teacher in magic really tell them to take things seriously. Sometimes the best we've got is a magician going, take acting lessons. Like, I'll take improv lessons, I'll take acting lessons. Like, great, wonderful. Why is it that when I see your show, I know that you have a background in theater, but when someone else's show, I don't? What can somebody take from this?
That's another really good question. What I always think of is the thing I probably took the most from my theater background is a lot of the tech side, understanding lighting, understanding cues, understanding like how a show should come together and how much of it should be prepared beforehand. And in my show, like, I'm running off of a fairly tight script. I leave myself a lot of openness to interact and stuff, but like, I'm used to like, this is the set show, this is what's going to happen. And I've set everything up to make sure that can take place. I feel very limited by the virtual format because I can't move around a stage as often as I normally do. My high school theater teacher was really big in like different stage pictures. So it was always like, all right, we've been, these two actors have been standing here. We have to change it. So you sit down and you go up on top of the stairs. And that's always stuck with me. And a lot of magicians on stage, a lot of magic acts can just be summed up as like the magician center stage with a volunteer and a prop. And then the next trick is the magician center stage with a volunteer and a prop, right? So trying to vary that up. It's a lot harder to do virtually, but I do try to make sure that things are constantly changing there.
I love that. It reminds me of, Aaron Fisher talks in magic about there being distinct snapshots that people take in their mind of a trick or, and even of an act. And I see that too. I love what you just said there. I think that's a great thing to take from the world of theater. And the other piece that you said there that I think, magicians are like just starting to open up to in the world of virtual now is this idea of like acts and scenes and lighting and music. And, like we've never really had to think of our act in terms of all of these different things, when the scene starts and ends, and if there's the lighting changes and music changes and all these different cues. And I think a lot of magicians have come into figuring out how to do this themselves, right? It used to be like, give me the mic, and I'll go on stage and just like you said, me center stage, people, they come and I do the tricks. And I think that we've learned that, in the Zoom world, if I am now the director and the editor and the everything, I can make whatever lights happen, whatever music happen. And all of a sudden there's a lot more opportunities, and a lot of people are stepping into these things that maybe they never wanted to have to learn before, like lighting or sound or anything like that.
It's also never been easier to critique your own show because it's so easy to just hit record and be able to get feedback and be like, oh, I didn't like that, or this didn't work, especially when it comes to lighting, right? Like it's not just your GoPro or something in the back room of a banquet hall and you're just this little speck. It's like you can watch your entire show after the fact and be like, oh yeah, that moment didn't look great, or this was weird,
And you can watch the audience react. Ben and I have been, we're basically hiring two awesome magicians to help us with our virtual act. And when we were kind of picking the different footage to send them, because we have all these different recorded things, which again, it used to be hard, right? To find a video to record. Now just it auto records. I don't have to press anything. My Zoom auto records. So we're looking through them to find the most recent show and and it was so amazing to be able to just watch side by side the same effect over and over and over again for the same grid, different people, but same grid over and over again, same joke, same line, same effect. You watch the laughs. You can hear the audio spikes or lack thereof. And it's just so easy. I love what you just said. It's so easy. There's no guessing. There's no obviously we're guessing if the line will be funny, if the joke will be funny, if the concept will work. But it's clear as day to know whether it is or it isn't. We don't, before we could get off stage and lie to ourselves. As long as you're recording it, it's pretty hard to lie to yourself.
Yeah, it's a little bit harder because you kind of have to look at each little box. It's not just listening to audio recording so you can hear. I do my shows where the audience is mostly muted. We can get into reasons for that later, but I do watch tape and you can look at that person laughed, and you can see the visual, everyone lean back in a grid, which is similar to the laugh track that you might hear on an audio recording. Because stage, I just audio record. I'm using this app right now to backup save this I audio record the show so I can hear what's getting laughter, what's not. I'm a huge proponent of that.
So we spoke a little bit about how you got into it. I want to hear a little bit about kind of what you were up to before the Zoom apocalypse, because we'll talk about that soon. But obviously you have a passion for the writing, and you have a book that's out called Out of Stock.
Yes, Out of Stock, A Magician's Guide. Yeah, the full title is Out of Stock, A Magician's Guide to Writing Your Own Line. And out of stock is the title. It is not the inventory status.
As you can tell, by the way, from even what he just said, he's not foreign to writing good words on a piece of paper. And I've attended his virtual open mics and virtual show that you put on. And both of them had a lot of really clever lines. And, in one sense, it's just effort. In one sense, it's just effort. But in the other sense, there's obviously a lot of tools here at play that are going to allow you to really create some amazing lines and really create sentences and jokes. And it's not only about something getting a laugh, it's about something being intelligent. Wow, that he actually thought about the double entendre of the word out of stock and integrated it in the thing. So there's these different levels. And I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of how that played a role, how this kind of concept played a role in the magic that you were doing pre-Zoom.
Right. So again, my background is street. And so I had tons of stock lines in my show. I was a Gazzo clone for a long time. I did pretty much all of his act. And there's still footage. Somebody just commented on this super 11, 13-year-old video of me. And it's just stock line after stock line after stock line. But it was really funny. It was probably my first kind of breakout where my parents were like, oh, he's kind of funny, but it was none of my material. And what started happening was I started feeling very ashamed of my show because people would come up and be like, oh man, you're so great. I love that bit. And I was just like, that's not mine, right? I felt like I had reached a plateau and I wanted to be like, all right, how do I do that? And so how do I get to this next level? And so I started getting really serious about learning to get rid of all this material that I didn't like. I threw my cups and balls set away so I couldn't rely on doing Gazzo's act. And forced myself to begin to replace this material with new material. And I started with the stock lines and I developed kind of a system, which now became the book, a systematic way to go through my act, identify the stock lines, and then rewrite them and eventually replace them so that I could now get to a spot where I still have that kind of street performer bank of lines for every situation, which I like. I like that kind of, I can go back and I have, I'm prepared for everything. If you've seen my show, it feels like I'm just a master of improv. I'm really not. I'm not that great at thinking on my feet. I'm just prepared. And I've been in a lot of situations, so I have a lot of experience with stuff. But I have that bank of lines. They're just all mine now. And so I can string them together. And I've been doing especially with Zoom now, I've been doing a lot more hosting than I've ever done in the past. And it's fun to be like, somebody will be on my show who's from France, and I'll be like, cool, I have French jokes for this. Like I have a joke sequence for that, or something weird happens and I have a sequence just because I've written it.
Hosting is the perfect example of that bank of stock lines where like, you can do all the preparing you need, but like and we did it with the newest trick in the book. When we used to do the live show here, Ben and I would host, it was an weekly open mic magic show back when it was live, or in person rather. And Ben and I would host the shows, and it was amazing how we just built lines for absolutely every situation. It was an open mic, so sometimes a magician would go on stage, they would shit the bed, they would do like the worst stuff ever, it wouldn't be funny, it would be 10 minutes of nothing, and then we would have to come back and bring back the live in-person energy without making the magician insulted to never be on our show again, and that was like a really thin line to have to walk. But now, I have a bunch of different things in my belt in my tool belt that I can use if I'm ever in that situation. And that's helped me when I've had to host events run by I had to host an air guitar. This was back in the real world, but it was an air guitar event, thing. But like, who knew if they were going to suck? So I had to be able to make these kind of jokes. And I love what you said of having a bank of lines. You just have to make sure they're yours.
Yeah. And then it has all these great effects of, now you're being more true to yourself. You're being able to express more. I mean, we could back up to and just talk about like, why should you get rid of stock lines in your act, right? And there's obvious ones of like, it's wrong.
One common argument in magic for using other people's material is that you learn the material as it is in the text, and then you get to know the material, and then you grow and you make changes to the material. And magic is written and passed on in that way. If you read a book, it tells you the words that you should say, when you should say it, how to say it, and why the joke is funny and how you should say it. So let's talk about that. So do you feel that's not a good way to internalize a trick and then change it? Do you think that we're talking about the step 2 here, where like maybe you do kind of memorize and learn a trick, and then now we're talking about step 2? Or do you think there's kind of a different way to take a trick and put it in the real world while skipping over all of or any of the words that came with it?
Yeah. So first off, what I'm talking about is for like intermediate levels. If you're new to magic, I think you should do Invisible Deck with the standard stuff and learn what a good trick is, right? Because there's so much in magic that you have to learn. Just the sleight of hand, how to command an audience, how to keep track of the dual scripts that are going on of what's really happening and what's supposed to be happening. And there's so much to learn that I don't expect somebody who's just getting into this to be writing their own material yet. In fact, I think it's almost detrimental. And I've seen acts where they just try to be super original and that's all they're worried about. And it's like, you would really benefit from just doing Fred Capps routines and learning what it's like to be good, right? Part of the reason my act is so strong is because I did Gazzo's act for so long, and that's a good act. So I
want to like pause and say, like, if you're listening to this and you're just getting started, you doing material, especially material that is for sale, like that's a little bit, we're talking about some of the whys here, especially material that is for sale. That is a great place, and that is a great way to get started and get going with magic, because, and I love what you said, like magic is hard, right? Like it's hard. You have to learn how this stuff even works first and how to even do it first before you worry about making it your own. So I love that. So that's like step 1, beginner. Then this kind of thing creeps in.
Yeah, because I think, like, why are stock lines so prevalent? And I think it's because they're functional. They deal with situations, props, people that magicians are dealing with constantly. It's positioning audience members on stage, having people hold out hands, introducing a deck of cards, right? So it's easy to piecemeal these apart and put them into your act to fill the dead time and to make things more interesting or deal with hecklers or whatnot, right? And that's fine, again, as you're a beginner, to use these crutches. I think they're very much training wheels. However, once you've gotten more experienced in magic and you've understood and mastered the fundamentals, and you can go on stage and know what you're doing and understand things, it's time to get rid of these. So if you've been doing magic for 10 plus years, you're no longer a beginner, right? If you performed at the same company holiday party 3 years in a row, you're no longer a beginner. If booking your act involves a tax form, you're no longer a beginner, right? It's time for you to now move on and learn that final thing, which is to write your own material and leave these training wheels behind. I'm not like some police that's going to go around and be like, oh, this person uses stock lines, right? It's all about yourself. No client is going to ask this of you. Most of your magic peers aren't going to ask this for you. It's just about setting that new standard for yourself to get you to that next level. And if you're not going to do that, I think for most performers, it's really going to hold you back, because it's not just about stealing material from other people or, making your act look more generic or doing things that are just worse for your show by doing a joke that someone else has heard of. If you perform a stock line in your show and somebody in your audience recognizes that line as being from another magic act or whatever, they now have to ask themselves, well, what else did this performer steal for this show? So including just one stock line in your show cheapens everything else, because they can't, if you're willing to do one stolen joke or one, and I use this word very sparingly because there's really not judgment here, like hack line. If you use one, then they have to ask themselves, well, obviously they're not above using this, so maybe that other bit that I liked, I shouldn't give that credit to this performer. That's the level that I want performers to get at, and it's how we're going to move past this idea that all magicians are the same.
I think you said two things there I want to highlight. The first one is that, like, no client, no customer, no magician is going to come to you after your show unless the magician really cares, but is going to come to you after your show and say hey man, there were some lines there that could be improved and you could write yourself. You could write those yourself instead of it being somewhere else. It doesn't happen that way. No one is going to tell you, and you don't need to. There are so many magicians who have full-time careers, happy lives, happy wives, happy kids, and they've written none of their own lines, and they bought all of them. And that's totally kosher. You're totally allowed to do that. But the two things you said there is that, number one, it is up to you to elevate what you do. And the only way you're going to elevate what you do is not by finding other people's lines to borrow. It is by actually figuring out what on earth it is that you should be saying, to write something yourself, something to that nature. And then the second reason is because it's going to really, really, really be hard to grow and stand out and be unique if you are legit not unique. Because if you're not unique, then you will not stand out. And we all know this, because who are the magicians who go on America's Got Talent that we like? And who are the ones that we don't like? The ones we like are the ones that do amazing things we've never seen before. We've never seen anyone like them before. We've never seen the thing before, across all of these Penn and Teller, Fool, all these shows. And who are the ones we don't like? They're the ones that go on and they do something that's just like what we've seen. They say jokes that sound like jokes we've heard before. And they do the kind of thing that we've seen 300,000 times before. You can have a completely successful career by using stock lines that aren't yours and things that come with, the show, and no one will ever stop you. But it is up to you to want to do it, and you should. And I love the reasons why you explained why you should.
To me, it's almost like you can't really call yourself an artist if you're just doing other people's stuff, right? Like if you're going to sit back and say, I am an artist and this is my unique magic, it's like, come on, dude. Like you're just doing, magicians like to play musical chairs with presentations and lines, right? So they'll take this teach me a trick thing and they'll from one thing and move it over here and be like, oh, look, my act is original. It's really not. And again, my show's not crazy, like out there, original, like Rob Zabrecki or in and of itself type, like really push. It's like, it's a commercial magic act that has a lot of jokes in it, but at least the jokes are mine. And at least I put some thought into it. And it allows me to also like stand behind the jokes that I want, not fall into traps. Like I've been completely immune from like Me Too and any sort of stuff like that, because I'm not doing old hack lines that just aren't funny in 2020 anymore. Like I think through things. I was like, would I actually want to say that? No. And I'm not banking on, well, this worked in a book. This worked on, the L&L video that's been on my shelf for 10 years.
It's amazing the amount of stuff that falls out of our mouth while performing if you're not careful, you know? And that's sometimes what happens is it falls out of your mouth until it's a habit, and then it's a habit, and then it's a stock line that's not yours. So
yeah, I don't think people try to sit down and say, oh, and then I'm going to write this in. You get on stage and it's usually happens in some void where you get to some point in your show where you realize I don't have a line for this, and you feel self-conscious. And then it's like, oh, I can just do, here's the Sharpie. Would you like a sniff? You know, and get that laugh. And it's like, oh, cool. Now that's part of your act. Right? Like, are you ever going to revisit that and be like, actually, I should replace that? No, until you buy my book, and then I tell you to, and then you can, because that's what it does.
So let's talk about it. We know all about the why. We know why you should. Let's talk about the how. So someone's listening to this, they're like, crap, man, you're totally right. You know, half my show is all full lines that aren't mine. I don't know where they came from. They came from these negative spaces that I filled with whatever came to my mind, and now it's a part of it, and I want to change it. Aside from buying your book, which everyone should do, what can we do?
So the book's split into three sections. The first section is just the base writing process, dealing with the stock lines that you say every show. The second part is all about preparing for the unexpected moments. And then the final section of the book is about applying the same model to writing new material. So it comes back to, I just bought a trick. How do I do this without having stock lines, right? But the base thing is 5 steps. And again, this is the only book I've ever seen that really does this. It's a systematic way to getting this result. You have to work for it, but it is easy. And step 1 is identifying the stock lines. So you want to grab a video of your show, live video in front of an audience, because exactly what you just said, Jonah, things fall out of our mouths when we don't expect it. So if you get that spot, and you say a stock line, even if don't tell yourself like, oh my God, I never say that, right? Like you said it on the video, write it down. So you take the video, you write down every stock line, every stolen joke that you have in the show, and no judgment, just do it, right? Like nobody's looking at this, you're getting better. I don't judge anyone for any of this stuff. It's, I just hope that people find this useful, and a lot of people have.
This is, as I've heard, the exact first step, more or less, that Mike Close does with anybody when they go on Fool Us, which is first step, wipe the hack lines. Like the first step is list all the lines that aren't yours and replace them, because that's literally the first thing that you need to do to put something on television that looks unique, that is unique and that doesn't look like every other magician's ever. So
there's one other part in this thing too, though, is as you're writing down the stock lines, you're also writing down whatever happens right before you say the stock line. So this is really important for later on to analyze why you added the stock line to your show, and so that we can then readdress that problem. Because again, stock lines are functional. So if you're saying, don't worry, it's not your fault, I picked you, after they messed up or whatever, that can change things. So it's important to write down both of those.
So I have a good example. Before we started this, I was trying to brainstorm one of the stock lines in my show that we could kind of wrap through. And I was thinking. I was like, I don't know if that's stock. I don't know, maybe. And then I just yelled over to Ben, and I was like, Ben, what's one of the stock lines in our virtual show? Like a line that we shouldn't be using. And then he just instantly, yelled it back to me. And what's funny is the biggest thing that you said is about it being functional. And it's so funny that we've built tags on those stock lines, like, secondary jokes to follow those jokes when those jokes don't even get the laughs that they're supposed to get. And now it's like we're building infrastructure in the wrong places. It should be built on your own thing. So
that's always a huge thing. When you have jokes that are just because the previous joke failed, if that previous joke fails every show, like my argument is like, why do you still have that joke? Save those jokes. It's good to have lines for when a joke fails, but save them for when a joke unexpectedly fails. Don't plan to have a bad joke in your show.
This is a line. First, I'll tell you the line and the tag. Then I'll tell you where it came from and where it's used right now. So the line is, just so you know, the more you drink, the better the show is. That's the line. The tag is, actually, I can tell Susie is drinking, and she says the show is still not very fun. So what's going on, Susie? That's the joke. That's the tag. The reason where those came from is when Ben and I used to perform at Dave & Buster's, those were really hard audiences, because when they entered the building, they thought they were going to play games, and then they were offered at the door the opportunity to also see a magic show, and then 30 minutes after they entered a building thinking they were going to play video games, they're waiting for a magician to show up on stage. So it's not necessarily that they were excited to see a magic show earlier that day. And there was a lot of lines that Ben or I had written. We were performing separately, at the time, but lines that Ben or I had written to help lubricate the beginning and get people in. So one of them was, if it didn't feel like there was the energy, Ben would say, by the way, just so you guys know, the more you drink, the better the show is. And that was a little joke for the place, to help them. So Dave & Buster's would sell more drinks, and also so that people would laugh. And then if that joke didn't get a laugh, or if there was people in the back who were like angry, which there often were, he would go like, oh, I can see that guy in the back is like, I am drinking and the show is still not that fun, to try to get even the most cynical of people to break in the first bit. Now that line just comes in our show. It's not because of any empty thing. We get 2 beats out of it. I think the second joke is more or less Ben's or mine. I don't know, like the tag, Greg is drinking, but the first joke isn't really, and I don't even know that it needs to be there, right? So I think that may be a good example where like now it just exists because we've got a wine glass in the show. So just after when we do a cheers, we say, oh, by the way, the more you drink, the better the show is, and then I'll make that tag about somebody. To get an extra laugh, but it's not our joke, and it's not our line. And now I've built infrastructure on a joke that isn't mine. It's found space, and it's built a home in my act, and now it's like it's obviously going to be work to remove it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Really interesting. I've never had that much of a detailed thing of where it started and where it came from. That's really, really interesting. And we've already kind of jumped ahead in analyzing why the joke got added. And I think it would be fun to dive into like why it's still in the show. And also that you're recognizing, do we even need this joke anymore? Which is a kind of more advanced thing. In the book, I say like, well, we'll get for it. So we've identified the stock line. We've identified what comes before it, actually twice, what came before it in the Dave & Buster's show, which was, I assume it's like the start of the show, and something happens
more or less in the first few minutes. It's something that is a little bit processy, or that's not getting the excitement. It's a side. Oh, by the way, the more you drink, the better the show is. If a trick doesn't get
doesn't get it, and it was kind of a looser thing. Gotcha.
Now we finish a trick and we do a little toast, and probably that line is there also because the toast at the end of the trick doesn't do anything, and then we have joke number 1 to get a react, and then joke number 2.
It's a transition to the next thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So that's step 1 is identify. Step 2 is understanding what the context of the joke is, which we've kind of already gotten into. And the context is, again, the function. What purpose does the joke cause? And it's very often to cover a line that doesn't happen, or very often it is, this is a boring moment and this makes it more interesting, is why a lot of these get added in. So you already nailed both contexts, right? The first was, I'm trying to up the energy at the top of the show, or kind of to cover a moment earlier in the show that didn't get a laugh. I imagine the Dave & Buster shows were kind of street performer-y, where you're attracting.
They didn't know they were going to see a magic show when they decided to go to Dave & Buster's.
And then in the current version, it's acting as a transition to kind of to connect the tissue, clear the wine glass, and probably bring on the next prop. Correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So those are the context, which is important to then understand later on when we rewrite the joke, that we're trying to address that context and that problem that exists in your show, and not just try to replace the joke with a like-minded thing, right? This joke isn't a joke about drinking. It's not a joke about the audience being drunk. It's a transition. It's a way to get them to cheer at the top and be more involved and engaged at the top. So we can, makes it way easier to write new lines for it, rather than just try to like, I need another joke about the audience being drunk, which is way too narrow. That moves into the third step, which is now we identify whether or not it is a base script line, meaning a line we say every single show, or is this a line that is reactionary that we say only sometimes?
This used to be reactionary, in the sense of like, this used to be, I think, a tool for delayed things. Now it now goes well with the trick with the wine
Right.
glass and us toasting and saying two jokes about this. And even though when the wine glass thing does get a reaction, we still use the joke because it's just now our transition. So I would say,
Right. Yeah.
I don't think it's like imperative to anything, but certainly now I think it's
base script. It's part of your transition process. So exactly. Yeah, I would agree with that. And then I would it depends on like, if you were saying this line every show in the opening sequence of Dave and Buster's, I still would probably consider it base script. Even if it like sometimes it's after the first thing or sometimes it's here, but pretty much every show I use this line, I would still probably consider it base script, which is good. So the reason we do that is because you want to focus on the base script lines first. So if you do this at home and you watch tape and you write down, you have a list of 6 or dozen stock lines, do their context, look at their context, figure out, does this happen every show or only sometimes? And then focus on the ones that happen every single show. And then we'll deal with the reactionary ones later for a couple reasons. One, they don't happen all the time. Two, a lot of the reactionary jokes are jokes that I think you don't always need, or a joke probably isn't the best solution for that problem. There's a little bit different ways, whereas keep your base script lines funny because you obviously feel like you need a joke there, and that'll keep your show being funny.
As commentary on that, I feel like when I didn't have such a script for what I do, I had more of those like random lines that I would have to use with a script, with beats that work, that whatever, like more or less everything is base script now, like it's hard for me to imagine so many moments that feel like I'll say them sometimes or not. I mean, the best thing I can think of is like certain crowd work that we do that I'll only do if I see a certain thing. And I won't do if I don't, but I feel like the more scripted your show is, the less of those like non-baselines you have.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, again, with the open mic especially, and I'm always creating new material, I don't have a full script for a lot of ideas, but I do have a bank of original lines that I fill in to fill those gaps, but they're mine now. So like, you've seen my show several times. You've probably seen the line like, after something happens, I always say, it's amazing. It's like discovering a dress has pockets, right? I have a series of those lines that I can always throw in to any routine. And that kind of does that. So again, once you develop your own material, you can start use lines in your own show all you want. Like I move stuff. I have a sequence to introduce a deck of cards or have any object examined that anytime I'm doing something new, I'll just use that framework as my structure to figure out the new trick until that new trick starts getting its own, develops. And it's like, okay, cool, I can do these new things. So yeah, that brings us to step 4, which is the writing process, where now you're going to take your joke, and not even your joke, but the context of your joke. And we'll start real quickly with the Dave and Buster's context, because I think that's interesting, which is, again, we're looking to get the energy up in this particular environment. And what you're going to do is you're going to write 10 attempts at jokes about that context. Now, if the word joke scares you, don't think of them as jokes. Just think of them as interesting ways to do that context, right? So I want to get the audience more energetic and more involved at the top of my show, right? What are 10 interesting ways of doing that? You write down 10 ways, and at the end, you'll present yourself with 10 ideas. And of those 10 ideas, one will always be the funniest. Creativity is relative. It's just about presenting yourself with options so that then you can go, oh, that one's good. Let's work on that. And that gets you to the next level. And as you do this more and more, you start having 2 or 3 ideas on that page of 10 being good, or even 4. And that's how you move forward. So like the Dave and Buster's thing, like my first thing, and then we'll move on to the glass because I know that's what's happening now. But like my first instinct was like, you're at a Dave and Buster's. Hey, you know what? This show's happening right now. Here, this person gets a ticket for cheering, right? And just handing that out to them to get them more involved is like my first thing. That's an idea that goes on the list. Not even that funny, but just more engaging.
Just as in like to reward somebody for being a part of it or something to that nature.
Yeah, and so for the current version of your show where it is just, you're cheersing, what's the next effect that normally happens after this? Or
It's an effect about a bonfire. So we talk about how Ben and I used to go to magic camp together. So we give context.
Right.
So we say that we've been living in this. Here, I'll do the line so you can hear how we get into it. But we say you probably wonder how it is that we ended up here. 1 year ago, they announced the lockdown because 2 years ago we thought it would be a great idea to move in together. Because 5 years ago we started the Toronto Magic Company. Because 10 years ago we went to Magic Camp. And then Ben goes, "That's a real place." And then we talk about Magic Camp and how we sat around bonfire doing
Cool.
tricks.
So in a lot of ways, I think you can actually just merge those together, right? Like, how did you guys get here? And then joke about the, Ben could be like, probably a lot of this, is like the first kind of transition link that links those things together. So that's an idea that would go on the list. And what's the trick that's coming out of it? Is like a goldfish. Is there wine in the glass or?
It's a silk through glass.
Okay. Gotcha.
We put like hard liquor in the glass as a joke. We say we're going to do the trick. We do a David Copperfield style illusion, but we're going to do it drunk. And we pour some hard liquor in it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can always tie because you have a lot of unique ideas already in there, you can always call back, especially like since this is a transitional piece. I would turn to when I'm brainstorming ideas here about like, what are callbacks I can make to the old routine, right? Also, I think just cheersing and setting it aside also kind of works in a lot of ways. So,
one of the keys that you said, just to highlight for myself before we dig in here, is about not replacing the line, but replacing the purpose, right? Mm-hmm. And like, I think that we always find it hard to replace a line where we're like, how do I make another joke about people drinking right now? Da, 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 da. And that's not really what it's doing. Instead, it's actually just serving a purpose now of a transition. It's now the question of let's brainstorm 10 other transitions, not necessarily, what's the other sentence that I can remove the line and put in the new line. It's not going to be surgery like that necessarily. It might just be about the purpose and reverse engineering that.
Yeah, 100%. It's all about addressing the problems it's a very functional way of looking at your show of this line does this. If I'm going to take it out, I need something else that replaces it. One of the most important things is if your stock line, the context of it is having to deal with the method or misdirection. If it's like it switches back, right? A lot of times that type of line is there to condition the audience to a situation that you're now about to exploit. That's very delicate. You can't just rip that out of some routines because it'll make the routine far less deceptive.
I'll give you another great example of a stock line that's even easier is we say, I know what you're thinking. Would those nice boys, nay, those nice men do that trick? Oh, sorry, that was so impossible. Would those nice boys, nay, those nice men do the trick one more time? And then we both go, no, of course not. Why would we ever do that? No way, no way. And then we say, okay, yes, we will do it one more time. Like that concept saying, will we do it? No. Okay, here we go. Even the joke of nice boys, nice men, like none of that. I mean, like it come from somewhere, but like certainly it's not our concept to do that. So let me ask, does that feel to you like a stock line, or does that feel to you like, the same kind of hyping up of an audience, but just, in our context? Do you see what I'm asking here? Like,
yeah, I mean, that what you just said there doesn't strike me as particularly stock. It is kind of like a cliche, which is difficult to deal with in a lot of ways, because you can make jokes about airline food even though it's a cliche, but like it should, understanding that if you're going to play into that, you are playing into that, right? And it will kind of hurt you. And if your whole show is that, a lot of comedy magic, which drives me nuts, is you do it again. No, we're like berating the audience for wanting something. That's where it becomes really problematic. Not even problematic, but just you start falling into that, like that more cheesy, not elegant kind of tone.
I love what you said about, that there's a difference between a stock line and cliche. I think that's a super interesting fine line. And sometimes it's really hard because, I feel like those concepts are certainly not our original concepts. You know, the jokes of like those boys know those, or those men know those boys or whatever, or saying, will we do it again? No. Like those are not our concepts. Those are cliche. Certainly it's not what our whole show is made of. But yeah, sometimes I don't know which of those lines I should feel bad about. Should I feel bad about the more you drink, the better the show is? Should I feel bad? Should I feel bad at either of them? None of them? Both of? You know what I mean? Like,
I think stock lines are more egregious because they are more exact. They are a specific piece, and the cliche, you can at least like, you're expressing your own kind of viewpoint with that of like those nice boys. And, you know, like there's some added aspect, whereas a stock line of like, you know, like the one you just said of, you know, the more you drink, the better the show gets, is just standard, right? Like that's just a joke that thousands of magicians have used, and somebody wrote it, and they got ripped off, and then now so many people have stolen it that it's just become cliche, worse than cliche, because it's standard.
Yeah. So we don't want somebody to have like heard it before, you know, that's like the difference, you know, it's different between heard it before. I love this. Is there anything kind of we're missing here in the process? Number one is identify it. Number two is to figure out kind of like its functional use, like what it's actually for.
To translate it into the context of the problem that it's solving. 3 is reactionary base, 4 is rewrite, and then 5 is to try the joke out. So next time, you know, practice it, say it out loud in your routine a little bit, whatever idea you come up with that you think is the best of your 10, and you can also revise it there. A lot of times I won't have the perfect punchline at that first level, but I'll, you know, brainstorm a couple and then I'll figure it out. I add tags very oftentimes. I like to, if I'm doing a new line, I don't know if this is correct, but I do it. I'll write multiple tags, and I'll write like a whole bit, and I'll just keep going the first time and see which connect, and then I'll edit out the ones that didn't, because then I have more confidence of like one of these jokes is going to land. Mm-hmm. And so step 5 is try the joke out. So the next time you're doing a show, when you get to that spot where you previously would have said the stock line, you do your new line, right? And now you start this feedback loop of you're recording your show. You hear what that is. Are you happy with the reaction? No, maybe try one of those other punchlines, or maybe try editing it down or something. Try it again. And now you're into the process of constantly revising, learning from your audience and getting the show better. And then move on. Once you're happy with that new line, move on to the next line on your list and start over.
I love that. And you've kind of given people a really easy plan of attack to dive in and start removing the bits and pieces. And Ben and I have tools now at our disposal to start removing some of these jokes that are not our own. And I think at this level, I'm happy that my show doesn't have as many stock lines as it did 5 years ago. I remember doing a whole act and getting off stage and being like, those tricks weren't mine and those lines weren't mine and nothing was mine. What am I even doing here? You know, like, so I remember having that feeling, and certainly, you know, I don't feel that anymore, but there are still little lingering bits and pieces that will not go unless you do something about it.
There are still bits and pieces in my show that I still sometimes utter in certain situations. And I'm like, why did I do that? You know? And I'm sure there are things in my show that I think that I've written that aren't mine. I've had that happen in the past where I've written jokes and then other performers have come up and like, that's kind of mine. And I was like, oh, you're right. And again, it comes back to your own standards for yourself of what do you do in those situations? And so I cut it, right? Like, all right, fine. If that's not mine. And I'm pretty sure I didn't, you know, I'm pretty sure I possibly could have independently created it and probably taken it from someone else, you know, cut it and just don't do it again and apologize. I did that writing the book. There's an example in the book where, because in the book I write with you, I actually give you my jokes that I rewrite on certain stock lines. And on one of them, I came up with a great line, and I was like, I actually think my friend Michael Feldman uses this line. So I messaged him. He's like, yeah, I use that. I was like, cool. And so I talk about that in the book about, you know, sometimes you will come up with things that you thought are your own, but you just, you know, took from your memory. That's a very common, there's a word for it too.
One interesting thing that's really happening here is, you know, I feel like we're kind of treating magic with the same standards as we would treat like, stand-up comedy or theater or anything like that. I think there's a level of standard, but I think the difference is, in stand-up from the get-go, there is no comfortability with you using someone's line or doing someone's act. It doesn't exist. That's not a real thing. And in music, it's really, really clear who is a cover band and who is a band. It's really, really clear, And by the way, music is kind of interesting where it's like magic, where like, you should probably learn some songs first before you write any. Yeah. Otherwise, it's going to be a mess, right? It's going to be really messy. But I think that by treating magic to the same standards as comedy, even though the journey there is different, even though it's not exactly the same where you have to start at writing your own thing. And I think we touched a lot here on the journey of what it takes somebody who's getting into the world of magic and how maybe using other people's lines and things are good. But I love that part of this journey now is hitting that point where you're fed up with the stuff that's not yours, but you're saying and doing. And now we have the tools to address them. So thank you.
It's all about transforming your act at speed, right? Like I'm not trying to can your entire act, just do this gradually. Because there's no, you do get to this point where you're working all the time and you have a show and you're successful, but you can still transform it even there and not can it. I'm not trying to transform everyone into Rob Zabrecki. I just want people to stop counting the balls in Italian when they're doing cups and balls. That's all I want. Let's get rid of that stuff.
Dude, I love that. Thank you for making it so succinct and so clear about why we need it and what it is that we need. I'd love to talk a little bit about the open mic show that you're running, because obviously with this concept of, hey, you got to change your stuff. Hey, you got to write lines. Hey, you got to try new material. You got to test it in front of real people. You got to record it. You got to watch it. It begs the question, where on earth do I do all of those things? And you have a place for it in the virtual sphere. Can you talk about kind of what that is and how it came to be?
Absolutely. So since the beginning of June, I've been running the Mostly Magicians virtual open mic, which happens every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific in a private Zoom room. It's not streamed anywhere, and it's there to provide a safe space for variety artists and magicians to polish up their material. I tried to create an open mic that I would want to be able to utilize to create stuff. And a lot of performers have cycled through to build their entire virtual acts, including myself. I've had a lot of people, some bigger names even step in to try out things for America's Got Talent, for just testing ideas. And when I first began looking at creating a virtual show, I started crashing comedy open mics because I'm funny enough that I can get in there and I have some connections. But I always felt kind of weird because comedy open mics are, they don't like magicians generally. And I had to be really funny, which is fine. I could do that. But I knew eventually I would want to be able to do longer form things that aren't just 5 minutes, and also be able to do things that were a little bit more serious or not, just always gunning for the laugh. So I started doing my own open mic, and we have a strong set of regulars that come through and new people that come through. It's about, it fluctuates in how many people are there. Signups are at 3 p.m. Pacific the day of. So there's a sign-up list that goes up. It's a Facebook group, is first off. You go to the Facebook group, there's a sign-up sheet you can go on, and you can sign up for anywhere from 1 to 10 minutes of a set. Because again, if you just want to come on and run one joke, I'll give you time. And if you're like, hey, I need to run this whole long trick, I think 10 minutes is enough for you to be able to try things out and do whatever you want. So we've had people that all over the world too, Malaysia, Canada, Australia, India. It's been really, really great to have this neat little community come together and work on their material.
Well, it's been awesome to watch it grow and watch it just become a great place for magicians to test stuff. I know Ben's been on it trying some weird stuff. Definitely, yeah. I've seen a few of them, and it's been really awesome. So thank you for putting that together. And I'm gonna have a link in this episode to, I guess, the Facebook group. That's probably the best place for people to.
Yeah, it's designed to be this isn't a public show. We do a showcase show at the end of the month, which is a ticketed event, just as hey, here's a celebration of the things we've created this month. But the show is like a workshop. It's insular. I don't want, like, the number one real rule is don't steal stuff from each other. I don't broadcast it. So it is kind of like, it's very open to get into, but like I want to make sure that it is people that share my values of not stealing material, not wanting to, it's there to work on material, and develop your own stuff at whatever speed that is. If it's your first time doing a virtual show, if you've been doing them constantly and you just need to test a new camera out, that's why it's there.
Talk to me a little bit about kind of how you have enjoyed or not enjoyed the world of Zoom and virtual magic. I know we've talked a little bit about, the book, we've talked about the open mic, we've talked about what you were doing before. I know you're up to the world of Zoom. Talk to me about how you've been feeling and thinking about the whole thing.
Zoom, I have very little interest ever performing for a camera because it feels like so cold and whatnot. But the idea of being able to do the same show and get better at it, iterate over it over time for different audiences really appealed to me. So once I kind of shifted my mind as like, I'm not just creating like a YouTube series or whatever, and I can make a show that's really, really good, I started really embracing the format. I think Zoom's made me interesting. I do the show with the audience almost entirely muted outside of letting some people come on when I'm interacting with them. And I think this has made me a much stronger performer, and I've become much less reliant on the audience feedback or the audience immediate feedback of like cheering and laughter, right? I have a lot of confidence in the material because I watch the video afterwards and I know what's connecting, so I can see, this joke is good. And that allows me to be way less insecure on stage. I don't need the laughter. In fact, if there is laughter, it kind of is weird now. It throws me off. And I'm excited to get back on stage and just see how much more confident I will be when there is applause and there is stuff. I find a lot of Zoom magicians really need that. They have a laugh track. They want people on. They want people cheering. And it's like, you kind of have to shift your mindset and just, they're here with you, and just do good material and it'll be great and people will really like it. And I think I've really divorced the applause from my ego in a big way, which for a street performer is huge.
Dude, it's a great shift. All the little nits and like all the little bits that we're able to get from Zoom as a performer, and part of that is, as a little bit of a different context, when I do a Zoom show for a couple hundred people, they're all muted because you can't do anything about it. But when I do a Zoom show for 20 people, they're all unmuted so I can hear the laughs. So what ends up happening is the practice I get in the shows for 20 people gives me the confidence for the shows for 200 so that I can say the joke and know that it's funny and leave the pause for the laughter and not feel like, if I can't hear it, I don't know it. And if I don't see them laughing, I don't know it's funny. I know it's funny. It was funny the last 39 times I did it. It's going to be funny this time. I think that in some ways, doing that on Zoom may be easier than doing that on, in the real world. Because I don't know, I just feel like there's so much less variability in a Zoom room. It's always the same. It's always people inside of their homes, like watching the show and grid the thing. Like, in person, I could be at so many different events. I could be in a home with people who know each other. I could be in a chapel with people that have never met each other. I could be with cousins. So it's always like different. And this maybe obviously sometimes is a little different, but a lot of the times you're just engaging directly with the people. So I think it's been a really cool platform. Is there anything else that you want to mention about kind of the Zoom apocalypse and anything kind of about that shift for magicians? I know you've been at the forefront of it in many ways, and I'd love to hear about any insights that you are, that you're pulling from the world right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's still trying to figure this out. It's been interesting to see the world kind of, the two worlds kind of go into, like, you either do a very like kind of my show, Ben Seidman show of like one camera situated space, and then other people are going like there's camera cuts all the time and lots of digital stuff to make it more like a TV show. And it's interesting to see both of those. And I think both are completely valid And same for whether or not you unmute people. I think Harrison Greenbaum does a really smart idea of having like the studio audience that's on the side so you can hear the laughter. Look at these people that are really doing this well and be like, why are they doing that? And why do I like this? Why is this effective? And also analyze, like, is that going to work for them? Right? Like Harrison is like laugh a minute, big energy. That might also be another thing of like, my show's a little subdued. I have a lot of energy in the show, I think, but like, I'm not up running around the stage and cheering a bunch. And I think that is, that's been an interesting switch for me on stage. Again, I use the space. I'm very high energy. And here being able to focus and just look at the camera and it's interesting. I can start to feel more of a connection there now, and really embracing that I think is important for people when it comes to Zoom performances. And just do it. If you've never done one, it starts 5 minutes at a time. Put together a 5-minute routine, jump on the open mic, jump on any open mic, and just start doing it and start getting comfortable. My first things were just things from my act that I started doing. There were like 2 routines from my stage show. I was like, these can probably work really well over Zoom. I added them. They are now, I don't even do them in my show anymore. They were just there to get me comfortable with the setup. And now I've developed everything else entirely new for Zoom.
Well, this is awesome, awesome, awesome information for people to get on Zoom and doing shows, information for people to, remove their old crappy lines and put in new, better lines that they wrote. Lots of wonderful stuff. We are gearing towards the end of the episode, and all of the episodes have some similar wrap-up questions. And the first is the endless chain. In order to keep the podcast going on for eternity, each guest is asked to recommend another guest that would be perfect for the show. So whose magical wisdom and ideas would be perfect for an episode of a show like this?
David Gerard. David Gerard is a fantastic mentalist magician in the Bay Area. He's not doing virtual stuff at all right now, but as when it comes to a magical thinker, I think he's among the top. He's the guy I turn to constantly, and he has a lot of great stuff I think you could share with the community.
I love it. Thank you so much for that. The next question is about modern magic. So there's been so much going on in the world of magic in the last year, 2 years. What's one thing about the world of modern magic that you like, and one thing about the world of modern magic that you don't like?
Right now, I like being able to connect with a lot of magicians that I normally don't, right? Like we get very in our own thing, but now because you can Zoom and go attend any lectures anywhere, it's brought the community together in a big way, which I do very much enjoy. What I don't like, the things that I don't like, I think was really exemplified by I don't know if exemplify is the right word, but the story that came out about the Magic Castle with the misogyny, the racism that is still prevalent. And I think we need to be very serious about looking at ourselves. And this comes back in a small way to stock lines. What are we holding on to? What are we, this is a boys club that we need to get up to the time with, and we need to stop making excuses for ourselves and become more inclusive. And I'm always happy to see more inclusivity, but there's obviously so much more we need to do. And the fact that the castle still comes out and people are still defending it, and there really not enough, in my opinion, nearly enough change happening there in response to the problems, that really upsets me.
Thank you for talking about this and highlighting it again. And I love what you said, because I think it's really true, where like some of the archaic problems in magic are baked into the stock lines, that we use, and even the like metaphors of magic and the word, like just all of it. Sometimes you don't even think, because it is second nature. I think taking a look at all the things that we don't take a second look at inside of magic that may be causing harm is critical. And looking at lines is one way to do it. And also, honoring when an important article, an important piece comes out that highlights something, to honor it, get loud about it, talk about it, and not sweep it under the rug.
It's about setting a higher standard for yourself, looking at yourself and being like, yeah, you know what? I was a part of this and I'm not going to be anymore. And then I'm not saying in an egregious way, but just looking the other way, or just saying, it's fine, or that's how it's always been, or, I think you got to set that higher standard for yourself, for others. And it starts with your community. It starts with your magic club. 100%. Yeah. Be the change you want to see in the world,
Dude, thank you for that. Let's talk about the take-home point. We've spoken about so many things in this episode. If someone's going to think back to our conversation, think back to one thing, that was maybe the most important thing or the thing for them to remember, what would you love that one thing to be?
I think just there, setting a new standard for yourself. It's a new year. You figure out like, hey, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to get rid of stock lines. I'm going to do more stage time. I'm going to be better about watching tape. These are easy little things that will make a massive change in your show, in your life. And if you are interested in either getting that stage time or dealing with stock lines or learning how to write, there's some resources that are out there for you that I've provided. The open mic is completely free. The book is very affordable on Amazon and ebook. So
$1,000 a month for 500.
It is $1,000. It's a subscription base.
Tell us where it's a subscription based book. Tell us, where can people find you? Where can they find your stuff, and where can they get the book?
The book is available on Amazon. The books are print on demand, so I think it's like $16 or something like that. The ebook's $10. It's a quick read. The book tells you to set it down to write, but most people just read the whole thing in like an afternoon. I made a mistake of, telling you to write it down, but then writing a book that you can't really put it down. Street performer in me, I transitions really fast. And then the open mic, again, is a Facebook group. If you go on Facebook and search for the Mostly Magicians virtual open mic, it'll pop up. Join the group. I'll let you in. And then check in at Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific for the signups. And then you just message me there with the time. We could talk about that. If you just want to watch the show, you can comment on that sign up or contact me as well. Yeah, you do have to have your camera on if you're just going to watch the show. And I do limit that a little bit I give preference to non-magicians that are just watching the show.
Well, there you have it. I hope you liked the episode, and I hope, of course, that you learned something. As always, tell a friend, spread the word. It means the world, especially episodes like this that I think are a little bit different, a little bit out of the box. I'd love to know if you thought that it was helpful for you to see inside of what my act looks like, or if you'd rather some other type of stuff. Let me know. And if you liked Ryan Kane, if you like what he's up to, if you like what he does, if you want to jam, then Ryan is going to be at unconventional.fun 2 Magic Land. He was a guest at the first one, and now he is on a panel on this. It might even be performing. I'm not even sure, but he's going to be jamming. It's going to be a blast. So come see me. Come see Ryan. Unconventional.fun 2 Magic Land is happening this weekend. I hope to see you there. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next Thursday. Peace.